Murdock's Music Minute, the channel for discussing astounding sounds and know-it-all reviews from the 60s to recent releases. This is my video number 30-something, and I thought it's a little bit time for a makeover, bringing something new to the channel, which I will do now live on camera. Things won't be the same anymore after this one. New glasses and a new look on music. Let's see how that affects my reviews. Wait, I've got another good one coming. Today, I'll take a look at an album from my birth year. Forget that you heard that. This album review contains mod memories, a Beatles ripoff, and the magic of 2 chords. I'm talking about the cool alternative to the Marmalade, the Jam. Eh? Well, I tried. In 1980, they released their 5th studio album, and within a short time had moved from being a mod punk band to becoming serious hitmakers in the UK. Let's take a brief look at that development before coming back here and to the album review. The members of the Jam were barely 19 when their debut album appeared in 1977. They had formed as pupils in the English small town Woking and had started out with covers of American rock and roll, soul and 60s beat. Then frontman Paul Weller discovered the mod scene of the 1960s and drew his inspiration as songwriter from that, combining the revival of English pop culture from the 60s, most notably The Who, The Small Faces and The Kinks, with social protest and the anger of punk rock. Hence, the Jam played a huge part in the revival of the mod scene in the late 70s and early 80s. Together with Bruce Foxton on bass and Rick Buckler on drums, Weller went on to create a stellar number of singles and albums for a generation that should also turn out to be extremely influential for future UK artists from new wave to indie and Britpop. The band's debut in the city was released in the year of punk 1977. It burst with youthful energy paired with influences from classic English bands of the 60s and political consciousness. It reached the top 40 in the UK, which was not too bad for a debut of such a young band. But this first success, including the punk-influenced single In the City, drove the group's label to demand new material quickly. Put under release date pressure, the trio pumped out the follow-up album This Is the Modern World still in '77, only a few months after their debut. Although it sold even better than In the City, the album audibly suffered from the hectic time schedule and underwritten material. For the third album, Paul Weller wanted to take a bit of time to come up with more inspired songs, but again was put under pressure from their label Polydor, as a consequence running into a writer's block. The sessions for all mod cons started sluggishly, but Weller also came up with the song Down in the Tube Station at Midnight, which, released as a single before the album came out, became the band's most successful hit at that point. All mod cons finally was completed and presented a more refined and mature-sounding Jam. The arrangements had become more detailed and melodic, and there was even room for surprisingly tender acoustic moments now. The album, released in 1978, was considered a triumphant progress for the band and saw the Jam's popularity rising steadily in the UK. Late in 1979, Setting Suns followed as their fourth album, featuring their first top 10 single, The Angry Eton Rifles. It was also their first album to chart in the USA. Setting Suns to this day is hailed as one of their most ambitious and essential albums. The quite hard-edged release started out as a concept album, but that got abandoned during recording, again due to a very tight production time schedule. In their home country, they could be considered stars now. With their first single of 1980, the non-album track Going Underground, which originally was only intended to be the B-side, the Jam finally landed their first #1 hit in the UK. So the band had just managed to score their first #1 hit in the UK. Accordingly, expectations for their next full-length album were quite high. In the middle of writing the album, Weller, though, not for the first time, ran into insecurities and a bit of a writer's block. This unplanned delay, together with complications with the artwork and the pressing of the record, increased the costs considerably for the label. Sound Effects was finally released in November 1980. Its cover artwork mimics the style and design of BBC sound effect records that were common in the 1960s and the 1970s. On the back we have parts of a poem by Percy Shelley, which moves maybe a little bit into a pretentious direction. The old laws of England, they whose reverend heads with age are grey, children of a wiser day, and whose solemn voice must be thine own echo, liberty. Yes, Shelley probably was an early dangerous socialist, and those lines probably very well reflected the band's attitude and opinions at that time, especially Paul Weller, who always wore his heart on his sleeve and always promoted a clearly left-wing opinion in his lyrics. This pressing is... Oops. Hello, record. This needs a bit of restoration, I guess. This pressing is a German pressing from, I believe, 1980, so the original year this album was released, but not, of course, a genuine original pressing. We also have a quite nice pastoral shot of the band at some lake, I guess. And at the back here of the inner sleeve we have a few band shots, including the lyrics. And if you look closely here at the back of the record, you can see that the drummer Rick Buckler was sporting a mustache during the sessions. Very suave. Like each and every album by The Jam... Yep, what are you doing here? Like each and every album by The Jam, Sound Effects starts with a proper punch. Money is also an issue here, however, and I get the feeling the band didn't have the best history with their label. Pretty Green is basically built around a crispy bass line and a simple but catchy vocal line on top of it. The song is all about money and seriously was discussed as the follow-up single to Going Underground for a while. Well, a different song became the lead-off single, but Pretty Green is an exciting way to open this album and get into sound effects.
Full of pretty green, I'm going to put it in a crude machine. I'm going to put it in a jukebox. It's got to play all the records in the hit parade.
Track 2 provides the Jam's perfect 60s inspired power pop. Monday has got a memorable tune, again great bass playing and a bit of piano in the chorus. This is a lovable variant of an Ordinary Love song, but also of the tradition of referring to certain days in pop music. But whereas usually in such songs Friday and the weekend are the stuff of dreams, in this song the protagonist dreams of Monday, where he will, or he hopes to see a particular girl again. So it's probably somebody he sees at work or on his way to work. Monday is another Jam album track that would have made a great single.
Oh baby, I'm dreaming of Monday. Oh baby, will I see you again?
Then we get to the energetic But I'm Different Now. It's a very short, snappy and again catchy song, displaying once more the band's punk side, but in the more refined way they had developed since all mod cons. It's a guitar-heavy song in which Weller takes on the role of a man who realized his immature and loveless behavior, but who now assures his lover that he has changed and that he's different. Well, let's hope it's true and move on to track number 4. Set the House Ablaze has a darker edge to it. The guitar almost sounds like post-punk, and the song's hook line is an eerie whistled melody. This is a clearly political track about, or rather against, right-wing indoctrination, probably aimed at the National Front Party. Tone and atmosphere of this cut remind of the more aggressive moments on the predecessor album Setting Suns, but also presage the non-album single Funeral Pyre that came out after Sound Effects. Closing off the album's first half is a double strike of the two best-known hits from this era of the Jam. The first one is Start, a song with a lot of swagger that would get the band into serious plagiarism troubles these days, because it candidly uses the bass line of the Beatles' Taxman to create a new song on top of it. There was already discussions about that back in 1980, but that did not stop the band to decide that this one should become their new single to promote the album, and it became their second #1 hit in the UK in a row. Lyrically, this is one of Weller's more cryptic moments, open to a lot of interpretation, but the way I read it, this seems at the core to be about the desperate wish for communication, or emotionally relating to somebody, even if it's just a passing encounter of 2 minutes. Yes, a very groovy, smashing single. And the second one, tucked away at the end of the A-side, is the famous That's Entertainment. The Jam switched to an unusual, more acoustic arrangement for this one. Weller achieved the dream of every pop songwriter with this song, creating an earworm consisting of as few chords as possible. Well, in this case, it's only 2 chords for most of the song, in total 4, I believe. That's Entertainment is a laconic or sarcastic look at rather bleak, very mundane, everyday life situations in working class life. Pneumatic drill and ripped up concrete, or opening the windows and breathing in petrol. The entire song is filled with such to-the-point snapshot descriptions. Musically, That's Entertainment remains a beautiful track.
Getting a carrot, travelling on buses, bring the graffiti about slash it up there, that's entertainment, that's entertainment.
Despite being one of the Jam's most essential songs, That's Entertainment was never released as an official single in the UK. Still, it made it almost to the top 20 there because it was bought as an import single from Germany, where the Polydor sublabel Metronome was responsible for the Jam and had issued That's Entertainment as a single to promote sound effects for the German market. The band also was rushed to create or to shoot a promotional video for the song then, and allegedly they had to wait quite a long time in a pub for the film crew to set up everything, so that the band, on shooting the video for That's Entertainment, already was slightly tipsy, and apparently if you look closely at the video you can notice it. Time to take a break and flip the record over to discuss what awaits us on side 2. Yes, it's dream time, not only for the cat, but also as the first title on side 2. Dreamtime uses the band's power pop formula to add a bit of experimentation. There is a psychedelic backward guitar introduction, and later on in the song some trumpet, I think, or some brass keyboard sounds, while Weller sings about a nightmare or anxieties brought on by the rather very real and frustrating life conditions in a rigid society. Social comment continues in the more tuneful and jangly Man in the Corner Shop. The gentle melody and singing with lots of la-la-las could easily distract from the fact that the song actually addresses class rivalry, jealousy of the allegedly better position of the other, and, in a more subtle manner, maybe also racism. aptly titled Music for the Last Couple follows. Interestingly, this is the only song credited to all band members. It is an experimental instrumental with influences from post-punk and ska music, and it is certainly the oddball entry on this album. But the sound gets back to normal for Jam fans with Boy About Town, a sprightly power pop track about the juvenile sense of life when your dreams and hopes lie between the shops up street and down street. Again, listen to Bruce Foxton's bass guitar on here, which often gets overlooked. Well, that was a quickly passing album. It ends with Scrape Away, a less accessible song that is quite post-punky and new wave-ish with interesting drums, but other than that, less memorable, I'd say. This is another more political song that clearly shows the more experimental side of the Jam that the band definitely wanted to explore on Sound Effects. So, that is Sound Effects by The Jam. The album reached number 2 in the UK and also became their most successful release in the USA. But this is where the huge difference in the reception of the band in the different countries becomes evident, because most successful across the pond here meant a mere number 72 in the Billboard charts. Paul Weller has stated that Sound Effects was his personal favorite album by The Jam, despite the not always happy recording circumstances. Sound Effects, as I would argue, is one of The Jam's most adventurous and diverse albums. It features a couple of magnificent tracks that show Paul Weller's talent for catchiness paired with intelligent and observant lyrics already at a very young age. One has to bear in mind that he was only 22 when this album was released. Sound Effects brings a lot of stylistic elements to the table, starting with the obligatory 60s mod references, but also punk, a bit of psychedelic elements, and the already mentioned bits from new wave and post-punk. The first half of the album is definitely stronger than the second half, and it becomes a bit incoherent after Man in the Corner Shop, but on the whole, this is a very strong release and easily ranks among the band's best albums. I'd say a lot on this album still sounds very fresh today. If you have seen The Jam more as a singles band, which is a widespread opinion, Sound Effects could change this opinion. Please listen into this one, and most of all, thanks for watching. I think I will join my cat for a little nap now until the next video.